Hello, Erin Caudell from Cup of Kudos here, and today we're going to talk a little bit about garden planning. So, if you're like me, you've been getting catalogs in the mail for a couple of months or even a couple of weeks. But before you start planning your garden and starting that seed order, there are a couple of things you want to think about. So, first of all, check out the zone map of Michigan. All of those green areas are the zone that Flint is in and Genesee County, and that's a zone 6. And so there are things that we can't grow in our area, and so you want something that is at least hardy to zone 6 to be able to grow here in Michigan. So keep that in mind when you're looking through the seed catalogs, because they have very lovely tropical things that may or may not grow well here. So the other thing I want you to think about is what your yard looks like. So sometimes it really helps to draw a picture of what your garden might look like. It's really easy if you use graph paper because you can use 1 foot per every box. And so this is a 15 by 20 foot garden. And put in where your house is, where your street is. Also put in where any trees might be that might have shade. Thankfully, because the garden is on the south side of the tree, this tree won't shade the garden very much. Because if you do have shade, you can still grow a garden, but you do want to consider things that are a little more shade tolerant. Maybe in that corner, if you have shade of a corner of your garden, you might want to grow things like broccoli or cauliflower or cabbage that are okay with a little bit of shade. If you have less than 4 hours of sunlight per day, you may want to consider maybe that spot isn't the best spot for a garden. Most vegetables, besides some of those that I mentioned, plus spinach and lettuce and some other leafy greens, those can be grown in partial shade. They do like to have 4 hours of sunlight, even if it's dappled sunlight. And then a majority of what you might like to grow in a vegetable garden is going to like to have 6 to 8 hours of sun. I always get so excited with all the seed catalogs, and it's always fun to look at what's new this year and what might be fun to try in the garden as something new. But as you're doing your planning, especially as you have plotted out what space you have, sometimes you have to be a little more choosy on what plants you might have room for or what grows well in your area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to look at what might work for you and talk a little bit about kohlrabi. Kohlrabi is one of my favorite plants to grow. I just love the snap of the plant, or when you bite into it. It's super delicious. But usually in a seed catalog, they will have a box about the culture or how to grow the plant. And often you're going to look at how many days to maturity. So in their catalog, their days to maturity, which you can find next to each variety. In this case, this variety is 45 days, and that's from direct seeding. So subtract 14 days of transplanting. So this 45 days is 45 days from the time you seed the plant, whether you seed it indoors as a transplant or outdoors in the garden. So take that in consideration. So if you're buying kohlrabi to plant in the garden, then you would take off the 14 days and know that you would have an edible kohlrabi crop in that many days. So you can also often find how many seeds are in a packet, so you know that you need to seed these 8 inches apart and that there is 100 seeds in a packet, so you can consider how much you need for your space. And then often how that plant grows. So kohlrabi is another one that you could grow in the spring or the fall when the weather's not quite we're not quite done with frost, and that you could plant those in a partial shade situation as well. So it tells you when it's ready and spacing, and those are things you need to know to go back and plan your garden. So one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of new gardeners make is that they plant too many things in the space. So even something like kohlrabi that needs 8 inches apart, so I can plant 3 kohlrabi for every 2 boxes. So that will help you fill up this spot and know that, tomatoes need a good 24 inches. So that's at least 2 to 3 of these spaces. So as you start to fill in, you'll find your garden will fill up pretty quickly, and but it will really help you grow a lot better plants.